The engine quit is a common claim or perception by pilots following an uncontrolled descent into terrain. But the United States Helicopter Safety Team, through detailed analysis of these accidents, determined that actual engine failures didn't occur. What in fact happened was the pilot had failed to maintain sufficient power, or rotor RPM, and subsequently lost control of the machine, hitting an object or the ground. Loss of control accidents due to poor performance management or exceeding operating limits occurred in nearly 20% of all U.S. helicopter accidents in 2009 through 2011. So why do 20% of all accident pilots keep driving their machines with perfectly good engines into the ground? Well, imagine driving your car up a mountain pass where the air gets progressively thinner. You press down on the accelerator pedal to maintain the same speed, but as the mountain gets steeper, you have to press down farther on the pedal. At some point, the pedal is on the floor and the car slows down. Well, your car's engine is providing as much power as it possibly can. Now imagine you are in a helicopter climbing to get over the same mountain pass. You can continue to pull up on the collective and try to demand more power from the engine, but this will only increase the rotor blade angle of attack, or drag, and reduce rotor RPM. The rotor system actually drags the engine RPM down with it. At a certain engine and rotor RPM, depending on your helicopter's model, the machine will simply stop flying. And this is why pilots, as they descend out of control, believe they are having an engine failure. So why does this happen? Helicopters perform much differently at higher altitudes, high outside air temperatures, and at or near maximum gross weight. As a helicopter climbs higher, the air gets thinner and less lift is produced by the rotor blades at a given power setting. A decrease in performance can be so significant that the pilot may not realize he or she is out of power until they notice a rotor RPM droop or are on final approach. The recognition usually comes too late. An approach angle and subsequent collective input at the bottom of an approach that worked just fine during a solo flight or at a lower density altitude suddenly won't arrest the helicopter's rate of descent. On May 8, 2011, a professional photographer contracted a Robinson R-44 with 2 rated pilots to fly over a downhill skateboard competition near Golden, Colorado. The following accident, caught on video, is a dramatic example of what can happen when a pilot experiences a lapse in judgment or loses situational awareness and puts the machine into a position where further controlled powered flight is no longer possible. The video indicates that the rotor blades were coning significantly and the engine RPMs sounded like they were decreasing. According to the NTSB, the pilot estimated that the helicopter's out-of-ground effect hover capability at its approximate weight to be around 5,000 feet pressure altitude. The density altitude at the crash site was calculated to be 10,600 feet. This was a power available versus power required loss of control accident. The pilot never should have attempted to decelerate through effective translational lift and thus put himself into an out-of-ground effect hover situation at that altitude. Why do pilots continually put themselves into a position where they run out of power or exceed their machine's limitations? It could be the training they receive or lack thereof. Most flight training occurs in a controlled environment, either at or near sea level, at a low gross weight, and with minimum fuel states. And unless they receive advanced mission training for hot, high, or heavily loaded conditions, like most military pilots receive as part of their advanced flight training, they are not properly prepared to operate at the limits of the helicopter's performance envelope. Since many pilots have never operated their machines in these extreme conditions, When they encounter power issues, they react inappropriately or incorrectly. The results are generally tragic, if not deadly. Pre-flight planning is essential to preventing loss of control accidents. Flight manual performance chart calculations are an integral part of this planning. It is helpful to know the actual density altitude at your operation location, but to find out if you can actually operate at density altitude represents the combined effect of pressure, altitude, and temperature. At any altitude, warmer air is less dense than colder air. If operating at a mountain location and the temperature is high, your density altitude could be significantly higher than your actual pressure altitude. A high density altitude will reduce your hover ceiling, limiting landing sites, reduce operating margins by limiting payloads, and can significantly reduce your rate of climb speed, limiting takeoff and landing clearances. It is helpful to know the actual density altitude at your operation location, but to find out if you can actually operate at any particular altitude, let the performance graph find the answer for you by entering the chart at the correct pressure, altitude, and temperature lines. Expect ambient conditions, however, at the intended area of operations to be different from those planned for. In your helicopter's flight manual under the Weight and Balance and Performance section, the height velocity envelope charts define the altitudes from which a safe landing can be made on a smooth, level, or firm surface following an engine failure. Density altitude has a major bearing on this chart. Referencing the depicted chart, the yellow areas denote the varying altitudes and weight where caution is advised. On most black and white charts, these areas are shaded. For instance, if you are at 4,000 feet density altitude and above 3,000 pounds gross weight, a safe autorotative landing is not assured. Flight manual performance graphs denote the operation of a brand new or spec engine with clean rotor blades, so calculated values must always be verified with an actual power check under the ambient conditions that exist at the operating site. Pilots, after loading or reloading passengers and cargo, would be well advised to re-verify those power checks each time before attempting another takeoff. In most cases, the United States Helicopter Safety Team has found these accidents were caused by failure to perform specific procedures, execute a proper decision, communicate, or adequately plan. Training and safety management are the primary recommendations for intervention in these cases. Training must include extensive discussions of aeronautical knowledge relating to piloting skills, airframe capabilities, proper power management, and specific information regarding mission profiles. In other words, what you do and where you do it. All recommendations center on the integration of safety and operations management. Thank you for your attention.